Most cat owners treat hairballs as something ordinary. That familiar sound, a clump of fur on the floor, once a week, like clockwork. Nobody disputes that. It really is an everyday thing. It's just that every day doesn't mean it has to happen every single week. In reality, it comes down to two things: how much fur the cat swallows and how quickly it passes through. Both are influenced by diet. Today we'll go over the specific dietary changes that make hairballs far less frequent, one supplement with an evidence base built specifically on cats, and what you definitely shouldn't do. A cat grooms itself every day. The rough papillae on its tongue, the same ones that feel like sandpaper when a cat licks your hand. Catch dead fur and direct it in the only direction they can: inward. Most of that fur passes through the gastrointestinal tract and leaves the body naturally, but some of it stays in the stomach and gradually builds up into a clump. When that clump reaches a certain size, the stomach expels it. Hence the sound, and hence what you find on the floor. This is a normal physiological process, but normal here means characteristic of the species, not inevitable at the frequency you're seeing. How often and how large hairballs are depends on two things: how much fur ends up in the stomach and how efficiently the GI tract moves it out. Both variables can be changed through diet. 1 or 2 episodes a week in a cat that's actively shedding is within the normal range. But there are signs that mean something else, and they're important to know before reaching for any supplements. If a cat retches often and at length but nothing comes up, that's not a hairball that's stuck. That's a possible intestinal blockage. The same applies if the cat refuses food for more than a day, if the belly looks bloated or the cat reacts to being touched there, or if there's no stool for 2 days or more. No supplement in this video will fix any of that. That's a vet, and often an emergency. If you recognize even one of these signs in your cat, this is the point to pause. There are several reasons why some cats get hairballs once a month, while others get them several times a week. The most obvious is breed and coat type. Long-haired cats physically swallow more fur. Persians, Maine Coons, Ragdolls, they're not sicker, they simply have more material to accumulate. The second factor is the season. In spring and autumn, the amount of dead fur rises sharply, and the GI tract can't move it out at the same pace it's coming in. But the most important factor for our purposes is the state of the GI tract and hydration. A dry, sluggish gut holds fur longer, and this is exactly where diet has the greatest leverage. A cat on dry food that drinks little is the classic picture of an animal with slow transit. And it's precisely these cats that get hairballs most often. When the contents of the gut move slowly, fur stays inside longer, accumulates, and forms a larger clump. This isn't a problem with the fur itself, it's a problem of speed. And here the simplest and most accessible tool is fiber. It speeds up transit and helps the fur keep moving rather than lingering and compacting. The first option is canned pumpkin with no additives. Not pumpkin pie filling in a can, not a spice mix. Pure pumpkin. One ingredient on the label. 1 to 2 teaspoons mixed into food a few times a week has a noticeable effect, and most cats accept it without resistance. The second option is psyllium husk. 1/4 teaspoon per portion. There's one important detail here that often gets missed. Along with psyllium, you need to increase how much fluid the cat is getting. Without enough water, fiber has the opposite effect and can slow transit down instead of speeding it up. With both options, start with the minimum dose and increase gradually over the course of a week. A sudden start causes digestive upset, and the smell you'll get will be worse than a hairball. Fiber speeds up movement through the gut, but there's a situation where fur has built up in the stomach and the intestines have nothing to do with it. There's simply no way for it to get out of there. This is exactly what a separate category of products exists for, and it's the only tool in this video, with direct clinical support, specifically for hairball control in cats. Malt paste. Laxatone and Tomlin Hairball Remedy are the two most common brands, both available on Amazon and in most pet stores. The base is mineral or white petroleum oil combined with malt syrup. The paste coats the accumulated fur in the stomach and acts as a lubricant, helping it pass onward instead of being expelled back up through the esophagus. The standard regimen is 1 to 2 centimeters, 2 or 3 times a week. Most cats will happily lick the paste off a finger or a paw. The taste is sweet and appealing to them. If a cat refuses, mix it into the food. There's one caveat that manufacturers don't always put front and center. Malt paste is not a daily supplement for ongoing use. Used daily, mineral oil can interfere with the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins. Course-based use at the recommended frequency is safe. The first two causes deal with what's already inside, but it makes sense to reduce the amount of fur that gets in there in the first place. And here there are two levers that work well together. The first is omega-3 fatty acids, fish oil in particular. Healthy fur stays in the follicle longer and sheds more evenly instead of coming out in tufts during a molt. Less dead fur on the cat's tongue means less of it ending up in the stomach. Let's be honest here. There isn't much direct research linking omega-3 to hairball frequency. This is an indirect effect through coat quality. But there is data on improvements to coat and skin condition in cats. Nordic Naturals and Zesty Paws make cat-specific formulas with dosing on the label. The second lever is brushing, and it's the only non-dietary method in this video. Every hair you pull out with a brush is a hair that won't end up in the cat's stomach. 5 minutes a few times a week for a short-haired cat and daily for a long-haired one gives a noticeable result within 2 or 3 weeks. It's the fastest lever of all the ones named here, and it costs nothing. Separate from the specific methods above, there's one change that affects all 3 causes at once and creates an environment in which the rest of the methods work better. A cat on dry food gets roughly 10% of its moisture from its meals. A cat on wet food gets 75%. A well-hydrated gut moves fur out more efficiently, and this isn't theory. It's the difference between a completely dry environment and a properly hydrated tract. If a cat eats exclusively dry food, switching to at least partial wet food is the biggest systemic step you can take. Royal Canin, Hairball Care, and Hill's Science Diet. Hairball Control come in wet food formats and contain an elevated amount of fiber, meaning 2 levers in one product. Make the switch gradually, over 7 to 10 days, mixing the new food with the old. When you walk into a pet store or open Amazon looking for something labeled Hairball Control, the choice is huge and most packages look equally convincing, but there are a few specific things worth looking at, and they immediately separate marketing from real effect. First is the fiber level. On the label, look for the crude fiber line in the guaranteed analysis. Regular food gives 2 to 3% fiber. A good hairball food is 4 to 7. If the number is below 4, it's regular food with a new name on the package. Second is the fiber source. Not all sources are equal. Cellulose works as a mechanical transit accelerator. Psyllium does the same, plus retains water and makes the gut contents softer. Beet pulp gives both effects in moderate measure. If one of these 3 is in the ingredients, the food at least has the right mechanism. If fiber isn't listed at all, or appears at the very end of the ingredient list, the effect will be minimal. Third, and this is what manufacturers don't like to say outright, a hairball formula does not replace malt paste if the problem already exists. These foods work as prevention and support, not as a means of removing a clump that's already formed in the stomach. If your cat already gets frequent hairballs, start with malt paste and transition to the appropriate food in parallel, not instead. And finally, a word on price. Hill's Science Diet Hairball Control and Royal Canin Hairball Care cost more than the basic lines from the same brands. The difference is justified if the cat already has a hairball problem. If your cat has 1 episode a month and is short-haired, a regular quality food with adequate protein and regular brushing will give the same result without paying extra for a label. While we've been covering what works, there are a few things that are popular among cat owners but either do nothing or create new problems. Better to go through them separately. First is pharmacy petroleum jelly instead of malt paste. The logic makes sense. Malt paste is mineral oil based. Petroleum jelly is also mineral oil, so why pay more? But pharmacy petroleum jelly doesn't have the consistency or the flavor profile that makes malt paste acceptable to a cat. Most cats will refuse to eat it, and forcing it on them means creating stress and associating it with feeding. Buy the ready-made paste. The price difference is minimal, the difference in outcome is significant. Second is olive oil, or butter, as a folk remedy. This advice has been circulating on forums for years. The idea is that oil lubricates the gut and helps fur pass. In practice, dietary fats are absorbed in the small intestine and never reach the fur in the stomach in a form that could help. On top of that, regularly adding fat to the diet means extra calories and potential digestive upset. Zero effect, real risk. Third is Hairball treats as a primary method. Greenies, Hairball control, Temptations Hairball. There are dozens of brands of treats with Hairball on the package. They contain a minimal amount of fiber, enough to justify the marketing name but not enough to have a real effect. Giving them as an occasional reward is harmless. Counting on them as a solution to the problem means spending money and time while the problem goes nowhere. Fourth is increasing food portions in the hope that more food will push the fur through faster. That's not how it works. Overfeeding doesn't speed up transit. It increases the load on the GI tract and can slow it down. If you want to speed up transit, use fiber and water, not food volume. None of these methods gives you zero hairballs forever. But together they do, in practice, what the title of this video promises. You'll start finding that paper towel far less often.